I'm going to make it my mission that at least the people who watch my periscopes are going to leave this crisis smarter, like a lot smarter, maybe healthier too. Then why not? We can. Might as well. Let me teach you a relaxation technique. Would you like that? This is an actual hypnosis slash, technique. So it's not exclusive to hypnosis. I'm not going to hypnotize you. Don't worry. I might do that later, but it'll be a separate periscope. This is a way to relax yourself. It works every time. All right. So what I'm going to tell you literally will work every time. So you don't have to worry. Well, I don't know if that would work for me. No, this just works for everybody all the time. And it goes like this. You should turn off your screens, for multiple times during the day. I like to not turn off my phone for more than an hour because I'm paying attention to, developing news, and we need to know what's happening in our community. Did your school get closed? Have the restrictions changed and all that? So I don't like to be out of contact more than an hour, but I'm also a person who's sort of in the front lines of the fight against the virus. For the rest of you, make sure you tune out regularly during the day. I mean, you might have to take an hour here, then another hour there, then another hour at night. But here's the technique for relaxing. Some of you have heard of this before. You find a comfortable chair. You could do this in bed before you go to sleep. So you could do it as a meditation, just sitting in a chair. And by the way, meditating is mostly just sitting alone with your thoughts for a long period and not falling asleep. That basically is meditation. If you're trying to think of nothing, that's just the dumbest thing anybody ever said about how to practice for something. You can't think of nothing. So if you hear the yogi has accomplished thinking of nothing, no, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. He has not accomplished that. Nobody can do that. So if you could just sit alone and try to quiet your thoughts, and if they drift to, let's say, an unproductive place, just sort of pull it back. But don't turn them off. Just push them back to something harmless. Think about laying on the beach. Think about something that doesn't take any brain power, has no stress. Just think about something pleasant. Think about your pet. Think about something you like. And just sit there for an hour. You will be amazed. Now, on day one, maybe you're not going to get any amazing outcomes from this. But if you keep at it, and you've got a lot of time to keep at it, a lot of people will be meditating experts, in a month. If you keep at it, and, some would say it's important to, inhale through your nose and take a deep breath and exhale through your mouth. But if you just sit quietly with your, in a comfortable position for an hour and try to quiet your thoughts, you're going to have a big, big gain. And it will intensify over time because you'll get better at it and it will become somewhat addictive. There will be a physical feeling when you're done, similar to, let's say, taking a long walk and then being done. Yesterday after I took a walk, I just sat on the couch, and man, did it feel good. It just felt good to be done exercising. You could feel your whole body just like glowing in happiness that you're not walking anymore because you're ready to stop. That's meditation. That's one way to relax. But here's another way that's more active. Your body is picking up tension, and you're not always consciously aware of it. It might be like, some of us get it in certain places. You might be aware of, oh, my back is all honked up because of the tension. But you also hold it in the rest of your body, and it isn't as noticeable. And that's why this trick works. And it goes like this. You sit in a comfortable place, or you could be laying in bed and you're trying to get to sleep. Pick one muscle group, let's say your hand. Squeeze it and hold it. Squeeze it and hold it. And you hold it until it's sort of tired. It's exhausted and it doesn't want to hold it anymore. So I'm over squeezing my hand, and now it's starting to be uncomfortable because I'm overusing my muscles. It actually hurts a little bit. Now release it. Release it completely. Then do it with your other hand. Same thing. Squeeze it, hold it, until you don't want to do it anymore because it's getting a little painful and it hurts. Then release it. And then you go through the rest of your body for the muscles that you can tense. So you can, if you can tense other muscles, your feet. I like to do hands and feet first. Those, oh my God, don't touch your hand. I like to do hands first, but you can do it with your calf muscles, you can do it with your thighs, you can do it with your glutes, you can do it with your chest muscles, you can do it with your abs. Just move across your body, and one by one, squeeze it and release it. By the time you do the cycle, you're going to feel great. It works every time. Works every time. So you don't have to wonder, am I doing it right? Will this work for me? No, you do those things and you will be more relaxed. And if you do it every day, it gets easier. So these are real good techniques. The other thing I suggest is watching comedy, and lots of it. Go to YouTube, look for comedians you like. I was just watching Bill Burr yesterday. Once you find one you like, YouTube will suggest other ones. I can listen to Bill Burr talk all day long. Almost everything he says sounds funny. Yeah, Norm Macdonald, great choice, one of the best stand-ups of all time. Hypnosis is generally when a person is in the room and you're working with them and you have a common vision of where you want to go, you're working on a specific thing, etc. So hypnosis is, in the specific sense, is just two people working together. And you have to be able to, the hypnotist has to be able to see the response in real time. So as you're doing the induction, you're watching the person's response, and you're looking for micro changes. So you're looking for changes in breathing, changes in muscle tone, changes in even blushing, etc. So you're looking for very small changes, and then you're adapting your technique as you go, because you're saying, oh, that worked, I'll do more of that. No, that didn't seem to work, I'll do less of that. So you can't do that in a mass setting. But that said, all of the knowledge and technique of hypnosis does become just part of your communication stack. So if you say, am I using my hypnosis technique when I'm talking to you? The answer is always yes, but not with the intention of putting you into a trance or anything. It's only the intention of, I know what is likely to be persuasive, and I know what is likely not to be. So I do things that are persuasive. That's not exactly hypnosis. That's just communicating effectively. Do you use self-hypnosis? I do. Yeah, when I took hypnosis class, what was it, 40 years ago now? One of the things that the hypnosis instructor did was he hypnotized all of us to be able to hypnotize ourselves so that we could do self-hypnosis and put ourselves into a deep relaxation. So 40 years later, I can still do it and do it instantly, and it's just like the first day. Now, why does it last 40 years? It lasts 40 years because the hypnotist created a simple association, and then I reinforced it. Had I not reinforced it, it wouldn't have lasted. And the simple association was this. We would hear the hypnotist's voice, and he would, just go through a relaxation routine, and we would feel relaxed. So we associated his voice, which I can still hear just like it's in the room. We associated his voice with our relaxation. Most of life is just that, associating two things until the qualities of one thing trigger or conflate with the other thing. If you thought of persuasion and hypnosis as mostly that, you'd be pretty close, all right? If you're trying to change somebody's mind or change somebody's behavior, it's usually about matching one feeling to another and then chaining them together until you've created a sort of a thoughtless reflex in a person. Because a lot of what we do is thoughtless reflex, and usually they're bad ones. Well, by the time you seek help, it's a bad one. There could be good ones. So somebody says, I don't understand how anyone could be hypnotized. The reason you don't understand it is that you don't understand what it is to be hypnotized. So let me explain that. So in let's say a setting with an actual hypnotist, somebody who's, you're paying money and you went to a hypnotist. In that setting, hypnosis works on every person who wants it to work. So the key is that you have to want it. That you can't, there's no getting around that, right? If the subject is sitting in the chair saying, watch me resist this, I can't be controlled, I will defeat this hypnotist with my willpower, well, then they can. Guess what? That's really easy. Ignoring the hypnotist is about the easiest thing you could possibly do. You just don't care, don't pay attention, don't play along. There's no risk of being hypnotized. It's the easiest thing in the world. Likewise, you could be in a deep hypnotic, they call it a trance. I'm not sure you can define what a trance is, but just somebody sitting quietly and they're sort of in sync with the hypnotist. So you could call that a trance, but it's hard to define what a trance is. That person at any point can just say, oh, I'm late for something, and just get up and walk out. They can. There's nothing that stops you. So if you're saying, I don't know how I could be hypnotized, because I would never do something that I didn't want to do. That's how most people think of hypnosis. There's nothing like that. There's no point at which a hypnosis session would involve you doing something you didn't want to do. Nobody would do that. You only do things you want to do. And if you want to do it, you're going to be open to associating it with something else. So, back to my example of self-hypnosis. When I do self-hypnosis, I can count from 1 to 20, but I don't count it in my own voice. Sorry. I count from 1 to 20, but in the voice of the hypnotist, who I assume has been dead for decades, but I can still hear it. And the association triggers me into relaxation. It's basically instant. So if you want to use self-hypnosis, think of it this way. Self-hypnosis is nothing but associating two different things. So here would be self-hypnosis. Somebody says, you sick, bro? No, I just always have a congestion if I'm talking too much. So I don't have sore throat. I don't have any illness symptoms at all. Actually, I'm feeling amazing because I'm doing all kinds of exercise and eating right and getting a lot of sleep. Honestly, I've never felt better. That's not a joke. In terms of my physical health and vitality, I've never felt better. I'm in really good shape right now, and I hope the rest of you are taking this seriously as well. If you watch, there's a movie called Network. Is that what it's called? An old movie about TV news people. And one of the characters was giving a tip to somebody who was less good at being on air on the news. And it's a tip I'd never heard before. And when I heard it, I thought, well, that must be maybe that's just a movie thing. That's not something that a real newscaster does, right? I thought, well, that can't be a thing. And here was what the character, I think it was William Hurt, said in the movie. He was explaining how to read the news. He said, you should randomly emphasize words. And I thought, well, that doesn't make sense, does it? Does it make sense that if you're reading off the teleprompter, that you would just on your own, you would just randomly emphasize a word? Doesn't it make more sense that you would emphasize the important words, right? I mean, common sense. And then you watch him do it, and he's clearly just emphasizing random words, and you watch it and you go, why does that sound right? Why does that sound right? So what you're hearing in my vocal presentation is that technique. It's a technique I learned from that movie, but didn't believe it. It took me years before I figured out that's a real technique, that's a thing. And watch me do it right now. So you're actually watching it happen in real time, so you know. But watch the pace and the variation that you can tell I'm putting into it. Now, the change in tone helps a little bit. So sometimes I'm down here, sometimes I'm up here, and I make sure that I vary it. So the varying of the tone is both intentional and it's technique. But even more than that is the spacing of words. Watch these two examples. I'll just read something off of my page randomly. I'm going to read my own tweet. I forgot I was going to talk about this. To talk about this vocal process. And I'm going to show you that I'm randomly accentuating words, but this is a technique I added myself. I sometimes randomly add a space. Because if you're listening to somebody talk and they're at a certain pace, ba 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 ba, and they pause, your focus goes right to it. So if somebody goes ma 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 ma, your brain just acclimates to it, and you're like, oh, there's this background buzz, blah 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 blah. I'm trying to follow along. I think I got most of that sentence. Bum 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 bum. I'm so bored. I'm thinking about other things. I'm half listening. Bum 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 bum. So the more the same your speech is, the less people pay attention. What is the number one rule of persuasion? Anybody? Anybody? Attention. The number one rule of persuasion is attention. See what I just did there? Do you see how I left a little gap? And you already even knew what I was going to say, right? You knew what I was going to say because I said it twice in a row. The second time I said it, I put it in a pause, and I made you stop and pay attention. And it worked. All right, now you were paying attention anyway, but you could probably feel it. As soon as I stopped my sentence in the middle and there was an unexpected pause, what did you do? You paid more attention. That's why I do it. So here I'll just read a tweet I wrote, and I said, as I told you on day one, based on experience alone, no, the White House didn't dissolve its pandemic response office. I was there. The I was there was the guy who wrote the article, not me. Now you see what I did? Now if you said to yourself, yeah, but I wouldn't have known, where to put the pause. Doesn't matter. That's the beauty of it. You can kind of put it anywhere. It's only to make people pay attention. It's not to make them pay attention necessarily to the next word. Now, in the best form, you're making them pay attention for the next word, but you don't need to. You can just use it to make them pay attention in general. So let's say I wanted you to understand that is based on experience alone, because that's kind of a fun part of the sentence, that I made a prediction with no data whatsoever. Based on experience alone, I did it in public, and the most unexpected thing, I would think, if you're watching this, wasn't it a little bit unexpected that I nailed that so hard? I mean, admit it. Who else? Did anybody else? Was there anybody else in the entire frickin' country who said, in public anyway, some of you probably were onto it early, but in public, did anybody else say, nope, fake news, probably got folded into another department because of redundancy? Basically, I said that. Somebody just reminded me of something I desperately wanted to talk about, and I kept forgetting. So thank you. So somebody was saying, just said the word ego. Somebody contacted me privately after Periscope, somebody who was new to the Periscope, and saw me bragging about a prediction. And they said, I like your work, but it just really turned me off when I saw you bragging about your success predicting something. It's like, didn't like the bragging, the ego stuff. Now, and I explained to him that he's lacking context. If you've been watching the Periscopes, you know that the purpose of me telling you, bragging if you will, and I'm doing it intentionally, is to reinforce that I have a certain filter on the world that I believe can be validated by being better at predicting than other people. So, should I not tell you that? Because that would be sort of egotistical, wouldn't it? Well, one of the lessons that I've taught you, and it's I think maybe the most important thing I'll ever teach you, is to remove your ego from the situation if you want to be effective. Your ego is your enemy and it's your obstacle. It's not your friend. It's not who you are. Your ego is a problem. You should treat it that way. Now, it can be a tool if you convert it from a problem to a tool, but you have to work at it. In this case, in order for me to let the audience understand that I'm making predictions and I'm really reinforcing them when I get them right, but I'm also really reinforcing them when I get them wrong. I think everybody would admit that, right? You've seen me make predictions that were wrong. I say it's wrong. I'll tell you a million times. I'll tell you why I thought it was wrong, etc. So we're trying a process. We're doing it in public. It requires me to make a public prediction and then reinforce how awesome it was that I got it right. It has nothing to do with how I feel about myself. I know that this is bothersome and annoying to some types of personalities. And it's probably interfering with your own ego, if I could put a guess on it, what's happening. If you could remove your ego from it, then you would be okay with me doing what I'm doing, knowing that I'm embarrassing myself in a sense intentionally, because whether I'm bragging about my successes or I get something wrong, both of those are reasons to be embarrassed, right? Both of those are reasons for criticism. And indeed, I get criticisms for both. So I'm telling you in advance, I'm not going to feel bad when I get one wrong. I just don't feel shame that way. And I'm not going to be shamed into not crowing when I get it right. And I'll say crowing. Because internally, I don't feel like I'm bragging. I feel like this is a necessary piece of information to know when it's right and when it's wrong. Take this emergency situation, for example. Those of you who have watched me be right about who was going to be the president, those of you who watched me be right about talks with North Korea, at least calming things down, we still think there's a long way to go there. Those of you who watched me right that we were not going to a kinetic war with Iran back then, those of you who watched me being right in the weirdest, most unexplained way, I might be right about Kamala Harris, although that one's probably more of a 50-50 situation. But the fact that she's she's in the top 2 conversation, top 3 maybe, conversation for being vice president to somebody who would not be so much in control, we presume, is kind of a weird prediction to get that one, at least as close as it is, even technically wrong. So if you watched me do those things in public and then tell you ahead of time I was doing them, why I was doing them, what the thinking is, what the filter is, and then watching it materialize, if you've gone through that cycle enough times, then when I tell you that the stock market is coming back, that we will recover, and that it will be fast when the recovery starts, and that you're going to be fine, and that you're not going to run out of food, do you believe me? Well, it's that crowing and it's the bragging that keeps the pattern in your head that says, oh yeah, he got some pretty unlikely things right, and the things that were easy, he got most of them right too. Now that doesn't mean I'm going to be right all the time, and I would make no claim to being magic at all. I have no magic powers. So you can watch and you can judge for yourself, and I guarantee that every time I'm right about anything, I'm going to crow about it, because it's part of the process. It's important. It's important for you. I wouldn't do it if it were just for me. It doesn't buy me anything to do that.